Damn them. Damn every single one of them who thought I'd never be more than a barcode scanner in a retail store. My name is Julia Lee. I'm 25, a former cashier, a self-taught coder, and the reason Apple's biggest competitors are about to lose everything. But don't worry, they won't see it coming. Neither did my own family. It was Thanksgiving evening, and the smell of roasted turkey and cranberry sauce filled the air, wrapping the house in a warm, familiar scent. But none of that warmth reached me. Sitting at the dinner table, I could feel the sharp weight of my family's judgment pressing down on me, much heavier than the traditional holiday feast before us. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm, to keep my face neutral. But it was impossible to ignore the harsh words from across the table. "Seriously, Julia," Olivia sneered, her voice dripping with condescension, "when are you going to grow up and get a real job? That retail position at Harris Electronics isn't exactly a career." I glanced at my plate, not trusting myself to speak. Instead, I focused on the mashed potatoes in front of me, trying to appear normal, trying to feel normal. But my heart thudded painfully against my ribs. How many times had this happened before? How many times had I heard their voices telling me I wasn't enough, that my dreams were too big, too unrealistic? But no matter how many times they said it, the pain never got easier to bear. Mom's voice cut through my thoughts. "Olivia's just concerned, Julia," she said, her tone wrapped in a layer of false comfort. "Look at her, she's already a senior marketing executive at 28. We just want what's best for you." I fought back the bitterness that rose in my throat. They couldn't see it, couldn't see me for who I really was. All they saw was the surface, just a 25-year-old working in retail, wasting time on some vague, half-baked dream. They couldn't understand that my job at Harris wasn't just a way to pay the bills. It was the field research I needed for my real work. They didn't know the countless hours I spent after shifts, hunched over my laptop, building an AI-powered inventory management system. An app that could change everything. But what good was it to explain? They never listened before. They wouldn't listen now. I glanced down at my phone, a small smile tugging at my lips. The email from Apple's development team was still fresh in my inbox, confirming they were impressed with my prototype and wanted to schedule a final meeting. My heart raced, but I kept my face carefully neutral. They would never understand how much this meant, how much it would mean to me to finally prove them wrong. It felt like everything was on the verge of changing, but I couldn't share that with them. Not now, not like this. The sting of their doubt would only drown out my victory. So I kept quiet. Olivia laughed, reaching for another dinner roll. "Remember when Julia said she was learning to code last year?" she teased, her voice sharp. As if someone who barely made it through basic math could build something worthwhile. I could feel my face flush with anger. But I kept my mouth shut. There was no point in arguing with her. She didn't know, didn't care to know. She only saw me as the perpetual disappointment, the little sister who couldn't quite measure up. "And look at her now," Olivia continued, waving her hand dismissively. "Still stuck in that retail job. What a waste." I turned my attention back to my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened the email again, just to feel the rush of validation. I had worked so hard for this moment, and tomorrow, my meeting with Apple's executives would change everything. But for now I had to pretend, had to smile, and nod along as my family continued to chatter and laugh around me, oblivious to the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. I felt a gentle pressure on my hand and looked up to meet Nina's eyes. She gave me a small, supportive smile from across the table, a silent acknowledgement of everything I was trying to hide. She was the only one who truly understood. "Tell us more about your new promotion," Olivia said, her tone full of pride as she shifted the conversation back to herself. "Your father and I were just telling the neighbors about it yesterday." The words sliced through me like a blade. How could they be so proud of Olivia's success while completely dismissing mine? How could they not see what I was capable of? But instead of speaking up, I simply smiled, the fake smile that had become second nature over the years. I had learned long ago that sharing my dreams with them only invited mockery. So I kept quiet, nodding along as Olivia talked about her new promotion, her latest achievement, the things they thought were important. I had bigger dreams, dreams they couldn't comprehend, and tomorrow I would take one step closer to realizing them. But tonight I had to endure their judgment. I had to sit here and pretend that everything was okay, when in reality I was silently drowning in their disapproval. My mind raced as I cleared the dishes after dinner. Tomorrow, everything would change. But for tonight I was stuck in this suffocating moment, surrounded by people who would never understand. "Julia, honey," my mom's voice called out, her tone the same mix of condescension and concern. "You really should think about Olivia's advice. She's already made it in her field. Maybe she could help you get a proper marketing position." I felt my heart skip a beat. A proper marketing position? That was their solution. Settling for something they thought was safe. But that wasn't me. I had worked too hard for this. I was too close to the breakthrough I had been waiting for. And yet, I couldn't share that with them. Not yet. I set the dishes down with a little more force than necessary, the clink of porcelain echoing in the quiet kitchen. My phone buzzed again, and I quickly glanced at the screen. Another email from Apple. The meeting was confirmed. My hands trembled slightly, but I forced myself to breathe deeply and push my excitement down. Nina caught my eye again, this time with a subtle wink. She was the only one who knew the truth. She was the only one who understood how hard I had worked for this moment, how much it meant. I gave her a small, grateful smile in return. I retreated to my old bedroom after dinner, needing a moment to myself. The space was exactly as I had left it, the same worn desk, the same computer where I had spent countless hours coding. It was a place of both comfort and frustration, a constant reminder of all I had sacrificed to get to this point. I opened my laptop, trying to focus on the presentation for tomorrow's meeting, but my mind kept drifting back to the conversation downstairs. The disbelief, the mocking, the fear of failure. Why couldn't they see? Why couldn't they understand? My phone buzzed again. Nathan, a friend from work, had sent me a message, and as I read it, a cold wave of realization swept over me. Olivia had been gathering information about my app, trying to find out everything she could, even going so far as to access my work computer. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt a familiar ache in my chest. But there was no time to dwell on it. Tomorrow was the day everything would change. Tomorrow, I would finally prove them all wrong. The air in the kitchen felt colder than usual the next morning, the early sunlight barely reaching through the windows. I moved quietly, trying not to wake anyone. The house was still, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft creaking of the floorboards, as I moved toward the door. But then I heard it. "I'm telling you, Mom," Olivia's voice broke the silence, sharp and clear. "We need to stop this now. Julia's going to humiliate herself with this app thing. I saw what she's working on at Harris Electronics. It's just basic inventory tracking, nothing special." My heart stopped in my chest. I froze on the stairs, my breath catching in my throat. How did she know about my app? How did she know the details? My blood ran cold as I listened to her continue, her words slicing through the air like a blade. "I spoke with my friend at the patent office," Olivia went on, her voice low but filled with certainty. "There's no record of Julia filing anything. We can't let her waste her life on this fantasy." I closed my eyes, trying to steady my shaking hands. My own family, my sister, my mother, were conspiring against me. They weren't just dismissing my work, they were actively trying to sabotage it. A rush of emotions surged through me: anger, hurt, disbelief, but most of all, an overwhelming sense of betrayal. How could they? How could Olivia, someone I had trusted my entire life, do this? How could my own mother, who was supposed to support me, stand by while this happened? "You don't need to worry about calling anyone," I finally said, stepping into the kitchen, my voice steadier than I felt. I wasn't sure how I managed to hold it together, but I did. "I can handle my own career choices." They all turned to look at me, startled. Olivia recovered first, her face shifting into that same smile she always wore when she was trying to be the voice of reason. "Julia, we're just trying to help," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "This app of yours, it's sweet that you're trying, but you're not a real developer. You need to be realistic." Realistic. The word hit me like a slap to the face. I could feel my pulse quicken, my fingers tightening into fists. This was my work, my dream, and I wasn't about to let them dismiss it again. "You think I'm not realistic?" I forced the words out, trying to keep my voice from cracking. I've been working on this for 3 years, Olivia. I've been teaching myself to code since high school. I've been building this app, realistically working on it, while you've been busy with your promotions and your corporate career. My mother's face paled. Julia, she started softly, her voice taking on that tone she used when she was trying to soothe me, to make me doubt myself. Olivia works with real tech companies. She knows what they're looking for. Maybe she could help you. No, I interrupted, the word coming out sharper than I intended. She doesn't. Olivia works in marketing. She has no idea what my app actually does. I could feel my body tense, every fiber of me fighting to hold my ground. I wasn't just defending my work, I was defending myself. They had underestimated me for so long, and now, with the opportunity to prove them wrong, they were actively trying to crush me. Olivia's smile faltered just for a moment, but it was enough. I saw your app at the store last week, she said, her voice dropping slightly, trying to regain her composure. It's just a small part of the system. What I saw didn't impress me. You saw what I wanted you to see, I retorted, my voice growing stronger with each word. The store version is only a small part of the full system. You wouldn't understand that though, would you? Because you didn't even ask about the rest of it. You were too busy trying to sabotage me. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. There was no going back now. I had said what I needed to say, but the weight of it felt like a stone lodged in my chest. They had tried to control my life for so long, telling me what to do, where to go, what was realistic. But now I was here, standing on my own 2 feet, fighting for the one thing I had spent years building. The kitchen fell silent. The only sound was the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, marking the passage of time as my family sat there, stunned into inaction. Olivia's face turned pale as the implications of my words sank in. My mother opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't interested in hearing it, not anymore. I have a meeting to get to, I said, gathering my things, trying not to let the tremble in my hands show. I had to leave. I had to get out of here, away from their doubt, their judgment. I couldn't stay in this suffocating house any longer. Julia, wait! My mother's voice, filled with worry, called after me as I reached for the door. We're your family. We just want to protect you from disappointment. We want to help you. The words hit me like a punch, and for a brief moment I almost hesitated. I almost turned around and let her comfort me, let her tell me everything would be okay, that they just wanted what was best for me. But deep down, I knew better. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting their own view of who I was supposed to be, and I wasn't going to let them keep me in that box any longer. I paused at the door, my fingers gripping the handle. Sometimes, I said, my voice quiet but firm, the people who think they're protecting you are actually just protecting their own view of who you should be. With that, I walked out. The cold morning air hit me as I stepped outside, a sharp contrast to the warm kitchen behind me. The streets were empty still as I made my way to my car. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive them for what they'd done, for how they had tried to crush my dreams before they even had a chance to take flight. But there was one thing I knew for sure. Today would be the day everything changed. Tomorrow, I would show them what I was capable of. The drive to Apple's headquarters felt surreal. I could feel my palms sweating as I gripped the steering wheel, the familiar weight of my nerves pressing down on me. The cool morning air came through the cracked window, but it couldn't soothe the rapid beating of my heart. Every mile seemed to stretch longer than the last, the anticipation building, tightening my chest with every passing second. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the chance to prove that all the hours, all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights had been worth it. As I approached the sleek glass building of Apple's headquarters, a sense of disbelief washed over me. Just a few months ago, I had been an unknown retail worker at Harris Electronics, clocking in and out like everyone else, struggling to balance my day job with my passion project. Now, here I was, about to present my AI-powered inventory management system to the very people who could make or break my career. I parked in the lot and took a moment to breathe, steadying myself. The gravity of the situation hit me all over again. I had spent years developing this system, refining it piece by piece, making sure every detail was perfect. And now, I was about to show it to executives at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. As I walked through the glass doors, I felt my nerves try to bubble up again, but I fought them down. I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The polished marble floors gleamed beneath my feet, and the minimalist design of the lobby felt almost intimidating, as if every inch of the space was meant to remind me of how small I really was in the grand scheme of things. A sleek elevator carried me up to the executive floor. My heart raced as I stepped out into the modern open space, where sleek glass walls gave the entire area an air of futuristic efficiency. Alice, my manager from Harris, was already there, waiting with a warm, welcoming smile. Her presence grounded me in a way I hadn't expected, and I felt a small measure of comfort seeing her there. Surprised? Alice grinned, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Did you really think I was just a retail manager? My breath caught in my throat as I looked at her, feeling a jolt of confusion. What do you mean? I managed to ask, the words coming out in a shaky whisper. I've been Apple's head of retail innovation for the past year, Alice said, a hint of pride in her voice. I've been evaluating new technologies in real-world settings, testing them out in the field. I've been watching you, Julia, watching you build your app. Her words hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for, and for a moment, I could only stare at her. You've been following my progress? I asked, stunned. But how? Why didn't you tell me? Alice chuckled softly. Because you didn't need me to. You were doing fine on your own. I've been watching you solve real problems at Harris and I knew you were onto something big, so I kept my distance. Let you grow on your own. I swallowed hard, trying to process everything. Alice wasn't just some retail manager, she was part of the reason I was even here. Part of the reason I had the confidence to keep pushing forward, even when no one else believed in me. Before I could respond, a few Apple executives entered the room, each of them introducing themselves with a firm handshake. I couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the situation. But as we sat down and the meeting began, something shifted inside me. I wasn't some small-time retail worker anymore. I wasn't the girl who barely made it through math. I was Julia Lee, the developer of an AI system that could change the way the world saw inventory management. I opened my laptop and began to present the app. My fingers, once trembling, now moved with a sense of purpose. The system I had built didn't just track inventory, it predicted customer behavior, adapted to real-time market trends, and even streamlined supply chains. The AI could forecast inventory needs based on factors like weather patterns, local events, and social media trends, creating an entirely new approach to retail management. It was revolutionary, and as I demonstrated the system, I could see the executives' faces lighting up with interest. "This is impressive," said the chief technology officer, his voice tinged with admiration. "But why test it in a small electronics store? Why not a larger platform?" I smiled, knowing this was the question I had been waiting for. "Because retail is where the real problems are," I said confidently. Working on the sales floor showed me what customers and employees really need. Not what executives think they need, but what's actually happening in real time. I've seen firsthand the inefficiencies and the missed opportunities, and I've built this system to solve those problems. As I continued with the presentation, my confidence grew with each passing minute. The features of the app, the real-world data, the way it could change the face of retail, it was all coming together. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that signaled interest, that indicated I had captured their attention. Finally, the CTO leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We'd like to make you an offer." My heart skipped a beat. I had imagined this moment, this exact scenario, countless times in the quiet of my bedroom, but now that it was happening, it felt almost too surreal to believe. The offer he made was incredible. Not just for the system, but for me. They wanted me to join Apple as the Deputy Director of Retail Innovation, working alongside Alice to bring my system to life on a much larger scale. The number they wrote on the whiteboard was more than I had ever dreamed of. It was more money than I had ever imagined, more than my family could comprehend. My hands trembled as I signed the preliminary paperwork, my mind racing with disbelief and excitement, everything I had worked for, all the nights of coding, all the hours of self-doubt. It had all led to this moment. And then, as I was about to leave the room, Alice pulled me aside, her smile turning serious. "One more thing," she said. "We're planning to implement your system in all Apple stores and partner retailers by next quarter, including Harris Electronics." The words hit me like a wave, and for a moment I couldn't process it. The same company that had dismissed my dreams, my family store, would soon be using my system. They would be forced to acknowledge what I had built, even if they had never believed in me. As I left the meeting, a sense of peace washed over me, mixed with a twinge of something else, something I couldn't quite name. But for the first time I felt like I had truly stepped into my future. Tomorrow, everything would change, and my family would finally learn the truth. The sun was still low in the sky when I left Apple's headquarters, my mind buzzing with the offer I had just signed. I couldn't quite believe it yet, even though the excitement surged in me, pushing aside any lingering doubts. This was it, the culmination of everything I'd worked for, the breakthrough that would finally prove my worth. But even as I sat in the back of the taxi, heading back to the hotel, I felt a familiar weight creeping in. It wasn't just the thrill of success. It was the undercurrent of something darker, something I had been trying to ignore, but it was now impossible to avoid. The truth was, I wasn't ready to face my family. Not yet. I had spent the entire drive reminding myself that this was a win for me, a victory not just for the app I had created, but for the person I had become through the process. I had fought for my dreams when no one believed in me, not even my own family. But despite that, there was a gnawing feeling in my gut. It was the kind of feeling that made me hesitate as I stepped off the elevator and into my hotel room. My phone buzzed, jolting me back to the present. I grabbed it quickly, a sudden sense of dread filling me. It was a message from Nina. "They're freaking out." I froze. My mind raced, trying to process what she meant. Who was freaking out? My parents? Olivia? Olivia's been making calls all morning. She's trying to find out what's really going on. She's desperate. I felt a cold rush of disbelief spread through me. Olivia, she was already trying to figure out what had happened. She had no idea how close I was to everything, to success, to making it. But she was trying to pull strings, trying to undermine me, even now. My hands trembled as I typed a quick reply. What's she saying? What's she doing? She's calling every contact she has at Apple. She's even trying to find out if anyone has heard about your project. I don't know how she found out, but she's worried. And not just for you, Julia. She's worried about herself. Her words hit me like a wave. Olivia wasn't just worried about my career. She wasn't concerned about me finally achieving something. No, she was concerned about how it would affect her. She didn't care that I had poured years of my life into this. She didn't care that I had struggled while everyone else doubted me. She only cared about how my success might mess up her own carefully crafted world. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The betrayal stung deep, sharper than anything I had felt before. Olivia, the one person who should have been the most supportive, the one who should have had my back, she was the one trying to tear me down. My thoughts kept racing. What did she hope to find? What was she planning to do once she had the answers? I didn't know, but I wasn't about to let her derail everything I had worked for. I opened my laptop, trying to focus on the next steps for the project, but my mind kept drifting back to the phone call I'd overheard this morning. The conversation in the kitchen. Olivia and Mom, plotting, scheming, trying to stop me before I even had a chance to prove myself. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. I had trusted Olivia, had hoped that one day she would come around, that she would see what I had done and support me. But she wasn't interested in supporting me. She was interested in controlling the narrative. She wanted to make sure I stayed in my place, that I stayed in the box she had put me in, small, insignificant, and beneath her. A soft knock at the door broke through my thoughts, and I jumped, startled. I opened it to find Alice standing there, her expression serious. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. I nodded, trying to hide the turmoil I was feeling inside. "Yeah, I just found out something. I'm fine. Just need to focus." Alice didn't push. Instead, she gave me a sympathetic smile and stepped inside. "You know, I've been thinking," she began. her tone shifting to something a little more casual. "You're not the first person to face this kind of pressure. Your family, they don't see the full picture, Julia. But that doesn't make what you've done any less impressive." I glanced up at her, grateful for the support, but also keenly aware of how hard it was to hear these words. My family? They should have been the ones to tell me this, not someone else. Alice was right. They didn't see the full picture. But it was hard to forget the sting of their words, their dismissal, especially now that everything was finally coming to fruition. "They just don't get it," I said softly, my voice breaking for the first time. "They think I'm still that little girl who can't do anything on her own. They think I'm a failure." Alice sat down beside me, her presence grounding me. "People like that don't get to define who you are, Julia. You've proven that already. Look at what you've done. Look at how far you've come. No one can take that from you." I forced a smile, even though I didn't feel like smiling. "I know, it's just hard to shake off everything they've said, hard to realize that they don't believe in me." "You'll get through it," Alice said with a reassuring squeeze of my shoulder. "And if they don't come around, then that's their loss, not yours." I nodded, trying to absorb her words. But deep down, I knew Alice was right. There was nothing I could do to change my family's perception of me. They had already made up their minds. And no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I proved myself, they would always see me as less than. And yet, as much as that hurt, there was a strange sense of freedom in it. I wasn't doing this for them, I wasn't doing it for their approval. I was doing it for myself. The betrayal from Olivia hurt more than I could put into words. But it wasn't going to stop me. Tomorrow, everything would be different. My system would go live. Apple would roll it out across every store, and Harris Electronics, my family's store, would have no choice but to embrace it, to acknowledge what I had built. And when that day came, I would walk away, not with revenge, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my success would be the answer to all their doubts, their condescension, and their rejection. I would let the truth speak for itself. That would be enough. The next morning came too quickly, and yet too slowly. I barely slept, my mind racing through all the possibilities, all the scenarios. The weight of the meeting ahead of me hung over me like a cloud, but there was something else, something deeper, that made my stomach churn with anticipation. I had worked for this day for so long, had sacrificed so much, and now I was finally on the verge of everything I'd dreamed of. I had fought to get to this point, to prove myself to the world, to show everyone who had doubted me that I was capable of more than they could ever imagine. But now that the moment was here, a strange mix of emotions flooded me. Pride, excitement, fear, and an undeniable sense of relief. I glanced at the clock on the wall as I made my way through the lobby of the hotel. It was almost time. My phone buzzed in my pocket, interrupting my thoughts, and I pulled it out to see a message from Nina. "They have no idea what's coming, do they?" A small smile tugged at my lips as I typed back. "No, they have no idea, but they'll find out soon enough." With that, I tucked the phone back into my pocket and stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. It was still early, and the streets were quieter than usual. The sun had just begun to rise, casting long shadows on the pavement. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt almost surreal in contrast to the storm of emotions churning inside me. The drive to Apple's headquarters was almost a blur. My thoughts were consumed with the magnitude of what was about to happen. I had known, deep down, that this was coming, that everything I had worked for was leading to this moment. But now that it was happening, it almost felt like a dream that had finally become reality. When I arrived at the building, the familiar gleam of the glass doors sent a shiver down my spine. I had been here before, but today was different. Today I wasn't just a visitor. I wasn't just an unknown tech enthusiast trying to prove myself. Today I was someone who had already proven herself. I walked through the lobby with purpose, my heart racing in my chest as I made my way to the elevator. Alice was already waiting for me when I reached the top floor, her smile warm and encouraging. "You're ready for this," she said, her voice steady. "You've earned this moment, Julia." I nodded, but inside, the weight of what was about to happen still felt overwhelming. Alice led me into the conference room, where a few Apple executives were already seated. Their eyes turned to me as I entered, and for a brief moment, I felt a wave of self-consciousness. But I pushed it down, reminding myself that I wasn't here to shrink back into the shadows. I was here to take center stage. "Good morning, Julia," the CTO greeted me, his voice calm and measured. "We've been looking forward to seeing your presentation." I nodded, swallowing my nerves. "Good morning, thank you for having me." My voice was steadier than I expected, but I could still feel the butterflies in my stomach. I set up my laptop and began to walk them through the features of the system. As I spoke, explaining how the AI predicted inventory needs based on a variety of factors, I could see the interest in their eyes. They weren't just humoring me, they were engaged. They were invested. "This system," I continued, "does more than just track inventory. It predicts customer behavior, adapts to real-time market changes, and even integrates with external data sources like weather forecasts and local events. It's an intelligent system designed to solve the problems that retail workers face every single day." The room was quiet as I demonstrated the system in real time, showing how it adjusted to a sudden spike in demand based on a weather alert and how it could predict sales patterns based on social media trends. I could feel their eyes on me, watching as the app came to life on the screen. "This is impressive," the CTO said again, his tone more appreciative this time. "The potential here is incredible. But as you know, it's not just about the system itself. It's about how it integrates into real-world retail environments, how it works in places like, well, Harris Electronics." I smiled, a bit more confidently now. "That's why I started with a small electronics store. I wanted to create something that would actually solve real problems. Something that would work in a place where people are constantly scrambling to keep up with inventory changes. Harris Electronics was the perfect test case for this system." But, as I signed the paperwork, my phone buzzed in my pocket, and I knew that this was just the beginning. The truth would soon be out, and my family would finally learn what I had been doing all along. I couldn't wait for that moment. The days following my meeting at Apple were a blur of excitement, paperwork, and endless conversations with the team that would help implement my system across Apple's stores and partner retailers. Everything was moving fast, too fast to fully process. But there was one thought that kept pushing through the whirlwind. My family didn't know yet. In the quiet moments, when the adrenaline of success began to fade, a sense of dread would creep in. It was an odd feeling. On one hand, I had achieved something monumental, but on the other hand, I could already feel the weight of the inevitable confrontation. My family, especially Olivia, would have to face the truth soon. And I didn't know if I was ready for it. The announcement about the new AI system was scheduled to go live across all Apple channels in just a few days. It would be the moment my system was officially unveiled to the public. The moment I could finally take ownership of my achievements. But there was a part of me that was terrified of what would happen when my family found out the truth. When they learned what I had accomplished, despite their constant undermining. I'd always imagined the day they'd finally understand, but I had never pictured it quite like this. The cold truth was that they had no idea what was coming, and once they found out, nothing would ever be the same again. I spent the next few days in a haze, the buzz of success and accomplishment constantly fighting with the gnawing anxiety. I kept telling myself that I had earned this, I had worked harder than anyone could imagine, and yet, I still couldn't shake the fear of how my family would react. Would they be proud? Would they finally understand? Or would they do what they always did? Try to diminish my success and make it about their own needs? On the morning of the press release, I woke up early, my stomach twisting with nerves. I had spent the last few months building my dream, but now I was about to share it with the world. I knew that my parents, my sister, and the entire network of people who had never supported me would see it. They would all know the truth. I glanced at my phone and saw a message from Nina. "It's happening today, huh? You're about to blow their minds." I couldn't help but smile. Nina had been my rock throughout this whole journey. She was the only one who had always believed in me, and that had made all the difference. "Yeah, it's happening. I can't wait to see their faces." I texted back. The hours seemed to drag on, but finally, the moment arrived. The press release went live, and the world learned about Apple's new retail system, developed by none other than Julia Lee. The system wasn't just groundbreaking. It was revolutionary. The media hailed it as the next big thing in retail management, and the response was overwhelming. I sat back in my office chair, watching the notifications flood in, my heart swelling with pride. But then, just as I started to feel the full weight of my success, the phone calls started coming in. First it was Olivia. "Julia, we need to talk, now," she said, her voice tight, panicked. I could hear the underlying panic in her words, and for the first time, it didn't feel like the usual sibling rivalry. This was real. She had no idea. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my insides were in turmoil. I knew what was coming. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Are you really the one behind the new Apple retail system?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I let the question hang in the air for a beat, knowing that I had the power to reveal the truth or leave her to twist in the uncertainty. It felt like a moment of reckoning. "Yes," I said quietly, my heart pounding. "It's true." I could hear her breath catch on the other end of the line, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. I could almost picture her in that moment, shocked, disbelieving, her world crumbling around her. "You?" She stumbled over her words. "You've been doing this all along, and you didn't tell me? All those times I—" She broke off, her voice shaking with something between anger and disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep it from me?" I felt the anger rising inside me, but I kept it contained. I had expected her reaction, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. "You didn't believe in me, Olivia," I said, my voice colder now. "You never did. Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you mocked me. Every time I tried to explain, you dismissed me. So no, I didn't tell you. I didn't need to." She was silent again, and when she spoke, her voice was quieter, almost broken. "I thought I was helping you. I thought I was protecting you from making a fool of yourself." I closed my eyes, the sting of her words cutting deep. "No, Olivia. You were protecting your own image. You wanted me to stay small. You didn't want me to succeed because that would threaten everything you've worked for." She let out a shaky breath, and I could almost hear her processing the weight of what I had just said. "I'm sorry," she said after a long pause, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know. I didn't see it. I just wanted to help." But the words felt hollow, as if she were only now realizing how much damage her actions had caused. The apology came too late. Before I could respond, the phone beeped with a new message notification. It was from my mother. "Julia, honey, please, we need to talk. Your father and I are trying to understand everything, but this is so sudden. We want to be there for you, but we're confused. What is all this about?" I stared at the message, a knot tightening in my stomach. It was all coming to light now, everything I had worked for, everything I had kept hidden. But despite the pain, despite the betrayal, there was one thing I knew for sure. I had done it. I had built something real, something that would change everything. And when the dust settled, when the shock wore off, they would have to reckon with the truth. I wasn't the little girl they had dismissed all these years. I was Julia Lee, and I had built something they could never take away. The days after the announcement were a whirlwind of emotions. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls, messages, emails, all of them coming in at a pace I could barely keep up with. The media was buzzing with excitement over the new AI system, and Apple's press release had been shared across every platform imaginable. But despite the excitement, there was one thing I couldn't escape: the fallout from my family. Olivia's first message had come through just minutes after the press release. It was frantic, full of disbelief, and perhaps a small seed of guilt. But nothing prepared me for the constant stream of messages and phone calls from her and my parents over the following days. They were desperate to understand, to somehow find a way to fit this new reality into the narrative they had built about me, one where I was still the younger sister with no direction, half the girl who played around with coding, and who, in their eyes, would never amount to anything more than a retail. Every conversation with them felt like an exercise in managing my own anger and hurt. It was as though they couldn't comprehend what had happened, and no matter how many times I explained it, they just couldn't seem to grasp the full weight of it. The hardest call came from my father. His voice was thick with emotion, a mixture of confusion and, surprisingly, a hint of pride. Julia, I don't know what to say, he began, his voice wavering. I never imagined you could. Well, I never thought this day would come, but I guess you've proved us all wrong. The words were almost enough to make my heart ache. Almost. You think? I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with the weight of everything I had kept buried for years. I spent so many years trying to prove myself to you, and now, you want to act like you're proud of me? After everything you said? He was silent for a long moment, the quiet stretching between us as he processed what I had said. I never meant to hurt you, Julia, he said finally, his voice smaller than I had ever heard it. I just wanted what was best for you. You didn't make things easy on us. I didn't know how to help you. But you didn't try, Dad. You didn't try to understand, I snapped, the frustration spilling out before I could stop it. You always told me to stay in my place, to take the safe path. And when I tried to do something different, when I tried to show you what I was capable of, you pushed me down. There was no immediate reply. And in that silence, I realized something painful but true. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had fought for years to get to this point, not for them, but for me, for my own sense of worth. And now, despite everything, I had to let them reckon with their own mistakes. The next call came from Olivia. It wasn't the angry, accusatory tone I had been expecting. Instead, her voice was soft, almost defeated. I didn't mean to hurt you, Jules, she said, her words coming out in a rush. I honestly thought I was trying to help. I didn't see it before. I thought I was being a good sister, but I was just scared. Scared that you were going to fail, that you were going to embarrass yourself. I didn't know what to do. I let her words hang in the air for a moment before replying. You didn't believe in me. You thought I was just wasting my time. You thought I didn't have what it took. I was wrong, she said, her voice cracking. I can't take back what I did, but I want to make it right. I've seen what you've built, and I'm sorry. I am so sorry for everything. Her apology, though late, struck me in a way I wasn't prepared for. But it wasn't enough. It didn't change the years of judgment, the countless times she dismissed me. Still, I couldn't ignore the small part of me that wanted to believe her, that wanted to believe that things could be different. I appreciate the apology, Olivia, I said quietly. But it's not just about what you said or did. It's about all the years I spent trying to get your approval, trying to fit into the box you created for me. You never saw me for who I was, only who you thought I should be, and that's something I can't forget. I understand, she whispered, but I hope that one day you can forgive me. I didn't know if I could forgive her, but I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. I had to keep moving forward, no matter how much it hurt. My journey, my success, it wasn't dependent on their approval. I had learned that the hard way. In the days that followed, I made the decision to step into the role at Apple. I had always dreamed of this moment, but now that it was real, it felt like both an ending and a beginning. I was about to leave behind the family dynamic that had shaped me, the one that had constantly tried to limit me, to make me fit into their version of who I was supposed to be. The moment I walked into my new office at Apple, I felt the weight of the decision. It wasn't just a new job. It was a new chapter. A chapter where I was in control, where I made the rules, where my dreams didn't have to be dimmed by anyone's expectations. I sat down at my desk, looking out over the city below. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the buildings. It was beautiful. I felt a sense of peace settle over me, the kind that only comes when you realize you've done something that no one, not even your own family, could take away from you. There would be more challenges ahead, of course. There would always be people who tried to stand in my way, but I had already proven something to myself. I had proven that I could stand tall, even when everything seemed stacked against me. My phone buzzed again, this time a message from Nina. You did it. The world knows now. How do you feel? I smiled, my fingers hovering over the keys for a moment before I typed back. Like I'm finally free. It was the truth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by anyone else's expectations. I was defined by my own, and that felt like a victory in itself. The weeks that followed my new role at Apple were a blur. Every day was a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and presentations. I was no longer just a retail worker trying to make a name for myself in a sea of corporate giants. I was part of one of the biggest companies in the world, contributing to a revolution in retail management. The AI system I had created was being implemented across every Apple store, and it was changing the way business was done in a way that even I couldn't fully grasp. It was beyond anything I had ever imagined, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something I still needed to face. Despite the excitement, despite the success, my mind would often drift back to my family. Olivia and my parents, they were all still there, their lives moving on without me. I knew they had begun to understand the magnitude of what I had done, but part of me wondered if it had really sunk in. Were they proud? Did they finally see me for who I was? Or were they still trying to fit me into the small box they had always kept me in? I kept my distance from them at first. I needed space. I needed to prove to myself that I could thrive without their validation, without their approval. But even though I was living my dream, a part of me still longed for that recognition from the people who had always meant the most to me. One afternoon, about a month into my new role, I found myself staring at my phone, hesitating. It was a message from my mother. "Julia, we need to talk. We've been thinking a lot about everything. Can we meet?" I stared at the words, unsure of how to respond. I had been avoiding them for weeks, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't ready to go back into that old dynamic. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough yet to deal with their mixed emotions and expectations. Still, part of me knew that I couldn't keep running from them forever. I had to face them. I had to understand where they stood now. They had to understand me, too. Not as the person they had always imagined, but as who I had become. I took a deep breath, tapped my phone, and typed my reply. "Okay, I'll meet you." We agreed to meet at a small cafe in the city, one of the places I had always loved when I lived in Albuquerque. It felt like a neutral ground, a space where we could talk without the weight of our old home looming over us. When I arrived, my parents were already sitting at a table, both of them looking more nervous than I had ever seen them. My father's usual stern expression was replaced by a mix of guilt and something that almost looked like regret. My mother, as always, wore that soft motherly look, but her eyes were tired, as if she hadn't slept much since the announcement. "Julia," my father said quietly as I sat down, his voice rough. "We've been talking. We've been thinking about everything about you, and we realized that we were wrong." I felt my breath catch in my throat. There it was, the apology I had waited so long to hear, but it didn't come the way I had imagined. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't the kind of apology that healed all wounds in one swoop. It was small, simple, and incredibly humbling. "You were right," he continued, his voice cracking. "I didn't see you. I didn't see what you were capable of. I didn't listen to you." My mother reached across the table, placing her hand gently on mine. "We were scared, Julia. Scared that you might fail, that we wouldn't be able to protect you. But we never should have tried to control you. We should have believed in you from the beginning." I swallowed hard, my emotions bubbling to the surface. "I spent so many years trying to get your approval, but you never really saw me. You always saw me as the girl who would never amount to much, the one who needed protecting." "I see you now," my father said, his eyes filled with a raw honesty, "and I am so sorry it took me this long." I took a deep breath, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to hear their words, and it wasn't easy to let go of the years of hurt. But at the same time, there was a quiet relief in knowing that they were finally seeing me for who I had always been, not who they wanted me to be. "I've moved forward, Dad," I said, my voice steady, "and I'm proud of where I am. But I want you to know that I didn't do this for you, or for Olivia, or for anyone else. I did this for me. I always have." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We understand that now, sweetheart. We really do. And we're proud of you. I can't tell you how much we regret not supporting you earlier." The weight of those words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in my life, I felt like my parents were seeing me, not just as their daughter, but as the person I had become. But there was still a part of me that wasn't sure how to let go of the hurt. The damage had been done, and it wasn't something that could be erased with a simple apology. They couldn't undo the years of doubt, the years of telling me I wasn't enough. But in that moment, I realized that I didn't need them to. I had already proven to myself that I was enough. I don't need your approval anymore, I said quietly. But I'm glad to know that you're proud of me. We sat in silence for a few moments, just absorbing the weight of the conversation. The years of tension between us seemed to hang in the air, but for the first time it didn't feel suffocating. It felt healing. I want to move forward with you, Mom. Dad, I said, finally looking at both of them. But I need you to see me for who I am now, not who I used to be. My father nodded slowly. We can do that, Julia. We will, and we'll make up for the time we lost. And just like that, the dam that had held back all my years of frustration, anger, and hurt began to crack. The apology wasn't perfect, and the healing wouldn't happen overnight, but it was a start, a beginning. As I left the cafe, I felt lighter. Not because I had gotten the apology I had longed for, but because I had finally accepted that their opinions no longer defined me. I had built something real, something that no one could take away. Walking out into the bright sunlight, I felt the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. I wasn't the girl they thought I was. I was someone who had created something extraordinary. And no matter what happened next, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally free to live my life on my own terms.